Today we're going to explore a story that is near and dear to my heart. So I want you to imagine that it's 1500 BC and you're sitting around a fire with a tribe called the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians were a maritime group of people, so they did a lot of fishing and trading, and they'd been through some stuff, much like we have. And as they sat around the fire, they told the story of this magical bird called the phoenix and how it rose in its beauty, singing its song for 500 years. And then when it came to the end of its life, it began to build a nest. But it didn't build that nest to lay eggs. It began to warm the nest. And as it did, the nest ignites, and the bird is reduced to ashes. But out of the ashes, then arises a new version of the phoenix, one even more magnificent, wings spread, colors blazing, song sweeter than ever, living another 500 years. The reason I love that story is because it really is a metaphor for the transformative process that we go through as human beings. And you can find versions of that story, that idea of transformation, in so many different traditions. We can see it in nature, right? As we move through the seasons, there's a period of breaking down, of going into the darkness, and then a rising up. We see it in the story of our way shower, Jesus Christ, as he faces his fear, coming to the point of his death, experiencing his humanity, his doubt, but yet going into the darkness and then rising up. You know, the most interesting story I think I've come across lately comes from the tradition of Hinduism. So in Hinduism, they talk about the cycles of life, and that there are cycles that we as human beings move through as in our human consciousness as a whole. And they're called yugas. And these yugas can take thousands of years. Some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, but there's 4 of them that we cycle through. And what they said is that right now we are in the phase called the Kali Yuga. It is the 4th and final phase of the cycle. And it holds profound significance in Hindu mythology. And I want to read to you a few of the things they say come with this cycle of the Kali Yuga. They say some of the characteristics are a decline in virtue and an increase in vice. It's a period where moral and spiritual values are said to be at their lowest. There's an increasing prevalence of injustice and dishonesty. There's widespread ignorance and lack of knowledge. There's disintegration of families and a weakening of social bonds. There's a prevalence of violence and conflict, and materialism overshadows spiritualism, along with some significant environmental changes and natural disasters precipitated by humans. Sound at all familiar? But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you in despair. There is good news. So while there's some discrepancies about when that cycle is ending, the most of the Hindu philosophers say that it's within the next 5 years. In fact, some say we're in a period of transition right now. So it is a period of breaking down. It's really a period of ego dissolution, if you think about it. Because much of this story of breaking down and death and resurrection also can be found in modern psychology. As we face our shadow, as we face those beliefs, those stories, those definitions of who we are that no longer serve us, we have to look at them, go into the darkness, face them, and out of the ashes rise into something greater. So, as we look at these stories that mirror our own transformation, we can use them to gain wisdom, to gain strength, to gain an understanding that although we may be in the fire in this moment, maybe personally in our lives, maybe as a country, as a world, we may be walking through fire. And we know that fire can be destructive. It breaks things down, but it can also be purifying. I have a background as a nurse, and so, I love to dive into how things were done way back in ancient times. And fire was the purification, the way they would sterilize things before surgery. Fire has the element of purification. So we may be standing in the fire, but perhaps we're being purified. So it's important to understand that when we come into this world, we are immediately placed in a box. You might call that box a crib, a cradle, an incubator. But the minute that little band is put on your limb, you are being defined. Your story of who you are is being written. In fact, it was being written before you ever got here. Because you come into a whole history of traditions. You come into expectations by the people around you. And I'll take that as an amen. They know. They just got here. As we enter life, we enter into a time period that comes with certain events. We enter into a family that has a history. We come into parents or people who take care of us that have their own stories, their own beliefs, their own expectations. And maybe it's a joyous event. Maybe you're seen as a burden. Maybe you're not wanted. There's all kinds of stories that come with us as we are born. And so those traditions, those expectations are placed upon us, and we start to be defined by those. Our gender, our spiritual traditions, our family expectations. So I want to read something from my book, chapter 12, or chapter 2. So as we think about all those expectations, all those definitions, all those things that preceded us, that told us who we are, throughout our lifetime, that gets added to us. As we go to school, as we take part in different communities, as we listen to media, as we experience times in our life, we continue to be defined. And our desire for belonging and acceptance compels us to conform. We then spend our lives reinforcing and often defending that identity. We draw to us the people and experiences that support what we believe to be true about ourselves. You see, we don't question that when we're younger, because the people that are responsible for our care are the people in power. So we look to them and say, what are the rules here? Who do I need to be for you so that I can get my needs met? And we go into school and other situations and we want to belong. We want to be cared for. We want to be part of community. And so we ask, who do I need to be to belong here? What are the rules? And we start to define ourselves by that. We start to morph into the expectations of our surroundings. So when I was young, we moved around a lot. By the time I was in 3rd grade, I'd been to 4 different schools. And so I was rather shy, if you can imagine such a thing, and didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't have any brothers, sisters, didn't know how to really even interact with my peers, got along great with adults. But I was always in this situation where I was the new kid in school. And like any kid, I had a need to belong. And so I looked for the group of kids that would accept me, the ones that I could belong to. And they were usually the outcasts, the ones that didn't quite fit the norm. Whatever it was about them, maybe they were, a little weird, a little nerdy. Maybe they had some different abilities that didn't fit what everyone's expectation was to be cool. And so those were my people. But one day when I was in 6th grade, there was this group of girls. They were the popular girls. There was also the popular boys. And they just had it all together. They knew what to wear, how to fix their hair, what to say, how to show up. You know the kind. Maybe you were one of them, I don't know. Or maybe you were an outcast. And so one day, they decided to meet, literally had a meeting, and decided that I had some potential. Some potential for coolness. They were right. It just took me another, 25, 30 years to figure that out and redefine what cool really is. But they met, they decided I had some potential, so they came to me and said, we're going to make you part of our group. Well, Holy Grail, right? The pinnacle of, a middle schooler's social life to be welcomed by the popular kids. So I got to eat lunch with them. I got to hang out with them at recess. I got to talk to the cute boys. That lasted 2 days. Now, I would like to think it was because I looked at my friends, my former friends, that didn't fit the mold, and my heart was breaking because, part of the rules of being in the cool club was you don't talk to those people. Certainly that did not sit well with me. And I'd like to think that's why I bugged out. But there was something else at play. There was my story that I wasn't that I didn't belong, that I wasn't cool, that I was something other than that. And I couldn't imagine being that. I didn't know what the rules were. I didn't understand that world. So I went back to what was comfortable. It took me until I was in college and made a decision that I was going to no longer live by the story I'd been telling myself my whole life. And it wasn't an overnight process, but I began to challenge that. We have to understand those stories. We have to understand those things that shape us in order to question them, in order to break them down, in order to burn them in some cases. We can take the truth, the wisdom, the compassion, the things we learned from them forward with us. But the definitions that no longer serve us need to go. My best friend and I had a saying that we would say to each other whenever, the inner critic came up or that voice of criticism, or who we should be showed up. We would tell each other, that's just a bunch of crap. It's just a bunch of crap. So I was recently invited to speak at the Chautauqua Institution. Any of you ever been there? Oh, nice. It's a 150-year-old institute, which I can't even describe. You have to be there to understand it. But it's this amazing, thought experiment, is what I would say. It's a place where people come together from all faiths, all traditions, and they share thoughts. They share their experiences. They share their stories. They share their beliefs, and they have conversations about that. I said it's a place where our better angels could show up, because there's an exchange of ideas that are done with respect. I may not agree with you. I may not even understand exactly your life, where you're coming from, your traditions, but I want to know more. I want to be opened by that. So there's these amazing conversations going on all over campus, the whole 9 weeks when they do this summer festival. And it's like this idyllic little place where all the houses are built in the 1870s. And so it's kind of, you feel like you're walking out of time in a way. You're stepping out of, real life and in this amazing incubator of thoughts and ideas and beliefs. And so while I was there, I got to spend some time with Chris Hayes. You may know him from his MSNBC show, All In with Chris Hayes. And he's also written a few books. So his most recent book was called The Siren's Call. And we were chatting a little bit about kind of the substance of that. It's a really good book. I would highly recommend it, because he talks about how attention is the substance of life. We might say it's our ability to be present, but he's using the word attention. Attention is the substance of life. And he opens his book with a story that informs the title of it. It is from the book The Odyssey, and when Odysseus is leaving the island, and the goddess of Circe tells him, here's some things you need to know on your journey to be successful. You're going to go through this place where the sirens will start calling you, and they will sing so sweetly that you'll want to go to them. But if you go to them, you will meet your death like so many before you. So she tells him, put wax in the ears of all your sailors and have them tie you to the mast so you can still see where you're going. You can still guide the ship, but have them tie you with ropes to the mast so no matter how loudly they call, you cannot go. And so they do that, and as they're sailing, sure enough, the sirens start to sing. And Odysseus begs his crew, untie me, let me go. But they follow his instructions, and they move through, and they live. What are the sirens calling us? Chris talks about how we have this intentional attention and this unintentional attention. And he said our world right now is like walking into a casino in Vegas with slot machines going off. All these things just grabbing our attention unintentionally. And advertisers, politics, they've all learned how to use that to grab our attention and distract us. But we are being called to put wax in our ears to that outer stuff and to turn within. Because that outer world will try to tell us who we should be. We are constantly bombarded with messages about what we should be wearing, what we should be driving, where we should be going on vacation. And underlying all of it is this idea that we're not enough, that we're not enough. We're not young enough, we're not old enough, not man enough, not woman enough, not straight enough, not gay enough, not skinny enough, not rich enough. That's the siren's call, grabbing our attention unintentionally. But the more we become aware of the stories that influence us, the voices that tell us who we are, the more we can pay attention and question, is that who I want to be? Is that the direction I'm meant to go? Is that how I want to live my life? Is that how I want to show up? Or is there something greater than that? Is there something bigger than that? Is there a truth that lies within me that will allow me to rise out of that as a more powerful, more authentic version of myself. You know, the ancient stories say that the phoenix tears will heal you. Sometimes it is in that healing. Sometimes it is in the tears we weep that we find the truth. Sometimes it is in our stories, our heartaches, our pain, our joys, our history, that we find the substance that allows us to move forward and the wisdom that's contained within it while we let the rest of it burn away. It is also said that within the presence of the phoenix, you cannot tell a lie. So as we think about that story and we think about the resurrection of the phoenix, we think about the resurrection of truth within us, that place where we cannot anymore lie to ourselves or one another about who we are meant to be. It is not what the sirens say. It is what the Spirit within us says, that we are powerful beyond measure, that we are amazing, incredible, compassionate, loving beings who can do anything we want because we are that powerful. And when we come together and we bring our collective intention together, as Adam said, we create even greater, more powerful force for good in the world. It is the alchemy of grace that lives within all of us. So after the service, I'm going to be out signing books, and I will tell you that this process, don't write a book about transformation if you don't want to go through it yourself. As I wrote this, the substance of it, I started last October, turned it into my publisher in March. It has worked in me. It has transformed me as well. And it was that connection to what's going on in our collective consciousness and that unfolding, that transforming that is happening within each of us that I think we are being called to something higher right now. We are standing in the fire and we are being purified. And this book became almost a love letter to humanity for me. There were days I wept as I wrote because I believe so deeply in the possibility that is emerging in each one of you, in each one of us, in our world. The sirens may be calling, the fire may be blazing, but this is who we're meant to be. So I would like to end by reading you the opening of The Phoenix Effect. And this work, this message, I feel like I am simply the conduit for, and have felt very honored to be able to bring into the world. And I want to say that if you are at a point in your life where you can't afford to buy a book, then coupon code GRACE, because I want you to have it. And it may just be the thing that transforms things for you. And if you're at a point in your life where you are prospered and want to share this with someone else and can afford to buy more than one, then that's appreciated too. For you are a conduit of grace as well. This is called Let It Burn. We are born with a fire inside of us. It is burning through our civilized mind, calling us back to freedom. The voice in the quiet moments whispering, there is so much more. The unrelenting restlessness compelling us to fully engage. The provocateur at the edge of our awareness, daring us to be real, to be original, to be outrageous. The fierce embrace of love inviting us back to ourselves and reminding us we are undefinable, unlimited, unstoppable. It is our true spirit burning to be unleashed. There are those who will feel its heat and shrink back, insisting it is dangerous, saying it is unholy and unnatural. They will fear the power of it, try to contain it or even extinguish it altogether. For them, the horizon of their perspective defines the world in which they live. They will be unable to fathom the undeniable grace that lives in the unknown. They will be the voice of contention and negativity. For in their smallness, they will be unable to hold a place for that which is being born. And they are every one of us when we are hurt or afraid and deny the greatness that is trying to emerge. There will also be those who come to warm their hands around the flames. They will feel drawn to it and will hope to catch a glimmer or a spark or be inspired by it. They will speak as if they know the heat of its blaze. The ones who will rise up and insist on being noticed, but are unwilling to face their destruction or trust in their awakening. But for those who dare to embrace the fire, there is no limitation. Playing it safe is not an option. These are the ones willing to dismantle who they thought themselves to be in order to discover who they really are. The ones who will let the heat consume their fear while embracing vulnerability as their true strength. And the voices of doubt and caution will only fuel their desire to seek truth, to rise above, to go beyond. And when others try to quiet them, stop them, or suppress them, they will just smile and carry on, letting the power of their presence speak for itself. Boldly, they will step into the darkness of the unknown and take the hand of wisdom that reaches out to greet them. Shattering illusion, they will speak of the mystery with awe-filled voices. These are the children of the fire, who will never settle for mediocrity or conformity or playing small. They will never let a minute go by unlived or unfelt, but will reach out for what brings them alive. And just as one hand reaches forward, the other reaches back, for they will be compelled to call out to a sleeping humanity, entranced, numbed, and conditioned, and love them into wakefulness. Let the fire be ignited, for this is the day of rebirth and resurrection. And as life rises up to claim us as its own, let us face the world naked and alive, shouting, "Let it burn, let it burn." Namaste.